Well, welcome to the Everyday Discernment Podcast. My guest this week is Jim Burns. He is the president of HomeWord. He speaks to thousands of people around the world each year and has more than 2 million resources in print in 20 languages. He's the author of multiple books. Jim and his wife, Cathy, live in Southern California, and they have 3 grown daughters, 2 sons-in-laws, and 3 grandchildren. His newest book is Have Serious Fun, 12 Principles to Make Each Day Count. Jim, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey, great to be with you, Tim. And I actually just added a son-in-law a week and a half ago. So I've got 3 son-in-laws. All 3 of my daughters got married. Yay.
Awesome. That's good to hear. And still 3 grandchildren?
Still 3 grandchildren. And we'll see more probably.
Very cool. Yeah.
Right now we got 3.
That's how it goes. Well, cool. Good to have you on the show. I got your book sent to me and I was able to read it, and I'm excited to talk about that. But just before we get into that, just let everyone know a little more. Anything else you'd like to add in with your bio? Anything else that might have been left out that can help us know more about you?
Well, you know what? Really, I love my family. And as I've gotten older, I put more and more energy. When I was younger, I used to have to say, am I only giving my emotional scraps to my family and doing my ministry? That switched a little bit. I mean, it's not like I don't do plenty of ministry, but that's been an exciting thing. HomeWord has 4 values: strong marriages, confident parents, empowered kids, and healthy leaders. And that's so we write, we speak, we put resources into people's hands on those 4 values. And I love what I do.
Very cool. How did that all start?
Well, my background is youth ministry. I wasn't raised in a Christian home, and I became a Christian when I was a teenager. And I wanted to do youth ministry ever since. And I kept working with kids, Tim, and I kept thinking, wow, we're helping these kids, but we really need to help these parents because they're, a mess. And so as time went on, I kind of morphed toward doing more, family ministry. And just as I was a part early on of the youth ministry movement in America, I've had the privilege to be a part of the family ministry movement in the church. And it's a really exciting movement. I'm seeing more and more on it. This afternoon, we're talking with a bunch of key leaders around the country on family ministry. And I'm giving like 10 things that you can do. And then they'll start, adding it. And I find they don't even need guys like me anymore. I mean, the church is waking up to the fact that we've got to help families succeed and be the place where we can help strong marriages and help confident parents. And, I think the church is doing a lot better job than ever before on it. And so the morph was from, becoming a Christian, getting involved in youth ministry at like 18, and then really beginning to move. I'd been in the church for 17 years. And once I got out of the day-to-day life in the church work-wise and came into HomeWord, we morphed toward that. There was a season where I spent a lot more time speaking to kids, like 250,000 of them a year. But then as I got older, I said, others can do that deal. I'll talk to the parents, even to the grandparents. And I'm loving this season of life.
That's great. And so a lot of it came from experience, and then you're able to share your knowledge with people today. And what have been some challenges you've seen with the culture, the parenting struggles? I mean, there's similar things throughout the ages, right, that parents have struggled with. But has there been any new challenges that have come up with parenting or with the youth?
Yeah, similar. You're right. Kids were being sexually tempted and they were straying from their faith and all the different things, at any age. But, I always say that, we were 6 and 8, 11, 15. We were never their age because they experienced so much so young. And so I think the culture has not been kind to us. I'm not one who just whines about the culture, because as Christians, we can spend all of our time whining about culture and not actually doing something about it.
Sure.
But the fact is that the culture makes it much harder to navigate, to help our kids become what I call responsible adults who love God.
Yeah.
And so parents really have to have their head in the game. And, they didn't have it. I was just talking a couple of days ago on healthy sexuality. I was talking to parents and I said, how many of you received good, positive, healthy sex education when you were growing up? And 4 raised their hand in a group of 400. And so then I said, all studies, both liberal and conservative, Christian and non, say that the more positive, value-centered sex education kids receive at home, the less promiscuous they'll be and the less confused, because we've got a lot of confusion. We got a lot of gender confusion, a lot of things going on, again, from your question about the culture.
Yeah.
And so as parents, we didn't have the tools and we didn't see this coming. So the world's on fire culturally. And we're like, what the heck just happened here? So that's where I think, people like yourself and others who are going to help us learn to discern, how do we keep our eyes on Jesus? How do we follow his teaching, and at the same time be students of the culture?
Sure. Yeah, that's really good. And I think, like you're saying, as a parent, to be the one who's at the forefront of what your child knows and understands. You can't just push them to church and expect them to do all the work. You can't just expect, you definitely can't expect the school to do all the work. And so you have to be at the forefront of what are they teaching, and then kind of siphon all the information that they're getting into, right, the Bible, the narrow path, so that, like you're saying, we can empower them to make those decisions when they get older, because the goal isn't to just shelter them and protect them until they're 18 and then send them out to the wolves. No, you want to gird them up and give them the knowledge so that when they go out in the world, they can be productive adults that are living with Christian values and Christian discernment. And so that's really what our call is as parents. And it's not easy, but it's, like you said, resources are more prevalent now than ever. And so there's really no excuse to not at least, put forth effort into making that happen. So,
well, what you're saying is so right and so right on and so true. And so as parents, part of our job is to not just, again, like you said, shove them to church and say, okay, you guys talk about this for our kids, but it's help them to learn to discern. So one of the jobs is, the kids today are making decisions that will affect them for the rest of their life at a young age. But sometimes they don't have the ability to learn even critical thinking. So take media, for example. It's being thrown into their face, but as parents, we've got to help them learn to discern, is this good or is this bad? What am I putting into my mind? What am I putting into my eye, through my eyes? Yeah. And, so we've got a good job, but like you say, there are a lot more resources today. And I think that's really, really helpful as we think about it. But again, kids have to discern what's good and what's bad, what's right and what's wrong. And they can't do that without help from adults.
Yeah, 100%. Well, speaking of discernment, I do like to ask all my questions, a time in your life when you had discernment and kind of when you heard from God, or you had to make a decision, kind of what that looked like, how you heard from God, how you knew it was God. Maybe you got it wrong, but maybe you learned something from the process. So if you could just take us back to a decision that you had to make and what that looked like.
I saw that question ahead of time and I laughed, because I go, that's usually I'm the guy who goes up. I make the decision to go, well, that wasn't a good decision. And I always say, I wrote a book called Doing Life with Your Adult Children. And I always say experience is a better teacher than advice. And I think sometimes through experience, I learn. I'm that guy. Oh, yeah. But I'm going to go back to 2009. I'm the president of an organization called Homeward. It's about a $4 million ministry. And right at 2009 was a time when the economy was crashing and Homeward started crashing financially. And our board was mixed on, do we just give it up? And for me, frankly, it would have been easier. I mean, I had great offers to in fact, I could have been a pastor of a mega church if I wanted to do that, or in Arizona where you're at. I could have done these various things. And I felt like God was telling me to persevere. And at the same time, we didn't have a whole lot of money. So it wasn't like I could keep doing the same thing. So we pivoted, we went smaller. And I had in 2009, I was telling people in the marriage world that a study had just come out that if somebody who has a troubled marriage will persevere for 5 years, 75% to 78% say that their marriage was better. So my word that I thought I heard from God was persevere. And it was the hardest thing. It wasn't the easy route was just jump. Yeah. But instead we persevered. And today Homeward is a lot stronger ministry. We do webinars for free, where people come on these webinars monthly from all over the world. Our influence and impact has increased greatly. And we're doing it because of that pivot. So the word that I heard was persevere. And to be honest, I didn't know how to spell persevere. I'm a writer. That's a tough one. Speaker. And I'm like, how do you spell persevere, God? But part of that comes in terms of just in my quiet time and whatnot. And then, the Bible says where there's no counsel, the people fall. In the multitude of counselors, there is safety. And I've been in a small group for 21 years of men who are a lot wiser than me. 5 of us get together every Tuesday. And they help me discern God's will. So the Bible wasn't clear. I'm looking at the Bible going, I could do either one here. I can find stuff either way. Yeah. But they said, well, what's in your heart? And I go, I think I'm supposed to persevere, but I don't want to get Homeward, the ministry, in trouble financially, because I think when ministries have poor stewardship, it's not a good idea. They said, well, what if you cut back so much, decluttered a little bit, and then kind of rebuilt? And that was 2009. Today, it's a whole different ministry. It's a lot better. It's going wonderful. And I would say if people were going to bet on it in 2009, they would have bet against it. A lot of people who were in on our deal. This is a quiet, people wouldn't know this. People thought, oh, Homeward's always been going great. I mean, we're 30 years old.
Yeah.
Now, 2009 was a tough season.
Yeah, that's really good with discernment, is just not going with the easy way, not going with what seems like the most, financially viable situation according to business acumen. And no, we need business knowledge in order to run things, as a good steward. But at the same time, there's times in key moments in our life when we have to go before God and say, God, what do you want? It may not be the easy way, but it's going to be, if it's your way, then I want you to go before me and I want to go that way instead of just doing it in my own effort, which if I do it in my own effort, it's going to fail. And so I might be able to prop it up for a while, but it's not going to last as long as it will if God's in it. And so that's really good insight, as well as having godly counsel. That's one of the sources of discernment I talk about, is godly relationships. We need those in our life to be able to help us guide through decision making when it's not always extremely apparent. And I like how you said, the Bible could have justified it either way. And, you can always pull out a verse to kind of justify the way you want to go. But it's different when you actually take time to reflect upon what God is telling you, to seek counsel and to wait upon the Lord, especially on big decisions. Big decisions, if you take the urgency out of them, then you find a lot more time to kind of digest what's happening and what God is telling you. And there's some decisions we have to make in the moment, but bigger decisions, it's a lot better if we can just kind of take that time. So,
Well, a man named Norm Wright, who was kind of a mentor to me, he's a marriage and family counselor, but he said, before people make a big decision, if they really want to discern, they should at least take a 10-day do nothing vacation. Because what you mentioned was, sometimes we make a decision in the moment, in the rush, without really kind of settling down. And I have found that if I'll hold off a bit, I'll change my mind about 12 times, but in the end, I feel pretty secure and good about the direction I'm going to go. But if I make if I make a, and sometimes you have to, as a leader, you just have to make a split decision. I mean, you do that all the time, every day. But really, on the big decisions, if you can just back it off a bit, I felt like it became clearer and clearer to me. When I waited, and that's been my process, not just on that thing that happened in 2009, but for a lot of issues in my life.
Well, that's why we have to keep our eyes on Jesus every day. Like I say in my new devotional, Eyes on Jesus is really about, it kind of ties in discernment, because you can't have discernment if your eyes are on Jesus once a month. You have to be able to keep your eyes on Jesus every day in order to make decisions every day that honor God. And so that's why I'm asking all my guests too, what have you found in your life that are practical ways that you're able to keep your eyes on Jesus in a world that's full of distractions?
Right. Well, this either sounds super spiritual or super unspiritual, but the year was 1983. So you can tell I'm dating myself here. My daughter had just been born, my oldest daughter. And, I was already speaking on the national tour with an organization called Youth Specialties. And so, I was already out there a little bit, but my devotions were really off and on. I happened to be in my bedroom that day. I remember it so well. And I was praying. And so it wasn't like I was an anti-prayer or something, but I said to God, I want to give you 2 hours a day, because there was a guy, and I went to Princeton, and there was a guy from Korea who gave God 10% of his time. And I went, man, if he can do that, I can do that. And I went, I'm not going to give him 2 hours a day, because he and Billy Graham supposedly did that. I have too much adult ADD. And I finally settled on 20 minutes. And I still remember where I was sitting. I still remember what I was doing. And I made a commitment to do that. And I opened the 1-year Bible, which I would do great in Genesis, and I'd get to like Leviticus in the 1-year Bible. I'd die. Okay. Well, I was thinking about this morning, actually, because I'm on the day. I've been doing it since 83. I've missed days, but nobody knows about that. They don't see that. I have a chair that I call my thin space between God and me. And so today I read the 1-year Bible. I read Jesus Calling, and I wrote in my journal Acts: adoration, confession, thanksgiving, and supplication. And then I kind of filled in with adoration. A lot of times I'll write the psalm that I was reading that day or whatever. And I do the same thing. My wife thinks that is so boring. She's like, I can't believe you've done the same thing. But that act right there, Tim, I think the anointing of God in my family, as a father, with our ministry, I actually think that act that people don't see. And really, to be honest, I hardly remember what I read today. I was kind of pushing to come and hang out with you. And, I don't remember what I ate 2 weeks ago, but it nourishes me for the day.
Right.
So, when Paul said to Timothy, discipline yourself for the purpose of godliness, I really think there's a part of that. Now, I don't think everything has to be discipline and works and all that. I don't see that at all. But for me, the phrase I like to say, and it's actually in this new book that you were talking about, it's the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. And so, there's pain in life. Mm-hmm. So if you have the pain of discipline, you're gonna win. And if you have the pain of regret, it's because you didn't do the work to get to that place. Yeah. So again, I'm not saying, and please don't make it sound like it's all works, but for me, the discerning moment was 1983. And I went, I am going to try this. And honestly, it was only 20 minutes. So it's not like it's like some, you're not looking at Mother Teresa. You're not talking to, Billy Graham or whatever. I mean, it was 20 minutes. And, there's times when I've done more, there's times when I've done less.
Yeah, that's so important. And that's why I love asking this question, because finding something that works for you between you and God, nothing that you can just cookie cutter, apply it to 1,000 people, but what works for you in your life, in this moment, in the season you're in. What is the cadence between your time with God? As long as you're having it, I think God can multiply it too. If you start with 5-10 minutes, he can multiply that. Once you start seeing the value in it and not just doing it because it's a chore, then you start seeing the fruit of that, like you're talking about. You see the fruit of it years later. And I love how you said, I don't remember what I ate 2 weeks ago, but it nourished me for the day. And you may not remember what the Bible, what you read 2 weeks ago, but it nourished you in that moment, in that time. And that's of anything you said, that was the most powerful thing that I'm going to remember. So thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
Well, I do want to talk about your new book. This is it right here. If you're watching the video, Have Serious Fun and 12 other principles to make each day count. So tell us real quick, just kind of your heart behind the book. Actually, Gary Chapman did the forward too, which was awesome. He's been on this podcast. So I didn't.
Great.
Yeah. So he did. Oh, awesome.
Yeah. He's been a mentor. I think he's done a few forwards in my life, but also just if I get a chance to be in his presence, I'm a better person for hanging out with a guy like him.
Yeah. He's great.
Well, it was the book that never was meant to be written, because I never planned on writing a book like this, but around 2009, where there was a lot going on, I came down with cancer, and I get a call from the doctor, and he said, come in this afternoon, bring your wife. That's not going to be good news if they say bring your wife. And come to find out, I found myself at the City of Hope here in Los Angeles, which is a great cancer hospital. And the night before, I wrote down some phrases that I wanted to pass to my kids. And so it never dawned on me I was going to write a book or even speak on it, because I really write more out of those values that we talked about at the beginning of the podcast on, strong marriages, confident parents. Yeah. But, there has been some discipline and discernment in my life to, have some of these phrases. So I wrote down the phrases, forgot about them. I was talking with a good friend of mine who runs a pastors conference, a couple thousand pastors, at a time. And he said, hey, would you speak on those? And I spoke, and then he came up, there was supposed to be another thing. And he came up and he said, let's just have a Q&A with pastors. And these pastors identified with my little phrases that were kind of some good, some goofy, whatever. I mean, I hadn't worked on them. I just spoke on it and come to find out, I hit something that was important. And for me, the book was, here are principles in my life to my kids that if I ever died, I'd want you to remember these principles.
Sure.
And because they've been so meaningful to me. And, ends up, I've done this, and the book's come out, and it's very interesting because it's unashamedly Christian, but the secular world has picked up on it. But I think it's really interesting because, one person said, love all the principles, don't like all the religion. That was one of the comments, but he wasn't so bad with the religion, like I wasn't, preaching it or something.
Right.
But, these daily principles or principles that are part of my life must be helping other people too, because a lot of people are really resonating with. So people think it's just on fun, and the first line is, have serious fun.
Yeah.
And that is a very important principle. But really, there's 12 other principles that have kind of helped. It's not a biography. I was telling somebody beforehand, I was doing a webinar, and the guy asked me about this project, and I was telling him about it before it came out. And he said, well, it sounds like it's your legacy book. And I was thinking the Monty Python. Some people would think scripture. I'd go Monty Python. I'm not dead yet, kind of thing. But the point is it kind of is a legacy book. It's what I would want to share with people.
Sure.
So that's why I wrote the book. And I really am honored that, it's only been out for a couple of months, but I'm really honored that people are going, wow, thank you. This has been really helpful to me. Usually it's much more in the area of marriage or parenting.
Mm-hmm.
And so this has been something different for me. And it's been fun. It's been fun to have these conversations.
That's great. And you're free from cancer now still?
Yeah.
That's great.
I got 5 years, and I hadn't thought about it. I mean, honestly, I need counseling for this, but I had like the ministry was going down. One of my daughters was having some trouble. And, this was one more thing. I even asked the doctor, the surgeon, I go, hey, can I postpone this? I'm on a speaking season. And the guy just looked at me like, you are a sicko, right?
Yeah. When it rains, it pours, huh?
Yeah. So at 5 years, it took me by surprise. You have to go in all the time. And the guy put his hand out. He says, hey, you're 5 years cancer free, many years ago now.
Awesome.
And I started to cry. I was like, whoa, this must've just welled up in me.
Yeah.
So yeah. Now what's fascinating about it, Tim, is that my wife a month ago went to the City of Hope for breast cancer. And so we're walking through this journey with her again. And we have an appointment next week, to start, the radiation process with her. So cancer has not been kind to us, but we also see the devastation that it's caused with other people. Where with me being cancer free, I almost feel like I need to apologize sometimes to somebody who got it a lot worse than I did. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's great you're cancer free, by the way, and praise God for that. And I think and I know the answer to this, I'm just going to ask it anyway. So have serious fun, and the importance of play. I think people might see that in two different ways, think that, oh, life's just fun and it's carelessness. And then the other part is like, life's too serious, I can't have fun. There's this dichotomy. So what's the good middle ground between, and what does it mean to you to have serious fun? And what's the message there?
Yeah. Well, the message is that you have to be intentional about play in your life. My PhD is in traits of a healthy family. And one of the traits is play. And, this is secular research, it's Christian research, whatever.
Yeah.
And so what I find, and I believe that families that pray together stay together, but I also believe that families that play together. So, play opens up a closed spirit. Fun in a marriage opens up a closed spirit. If you have a child who's, all bummed at you or whatever, or a teenager or whatever, when you have connection with play. So play doesn't mean, it could be, you could go out and play tennis, or you could have games or whatever, but play, like we were talking, my daughter and I were talking on the way I was driving to my office to come and talk to you. And she was talking about how she took her two kids, and they just got on the bike. They live about 5 minutes from the beach, and they watched the sunset last night, and how cool that was while the kids just ran around on the sand. That's play.
Yeah.
And that's connection. Play isn't going to your kid's soccer game. Please go to your kid's soccer game, but play is connecting. And so I think we have to be intentional about that. And so it's building traditions. It's building memories. At the end of your year, or at least we've done this with our family, and some people do it, where we'll kind of go, hey, what was the high point? Nobody ever goes, it was a 3-hour Zoom business meeting. Right. What they say is, it was when we went to Disneyland, or we went to the beach and mom fell in the water, whatever it is, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's laughter. Laughter opens up things. And so I kind of write it from more almost I'm not by any means a scientist, don't get that wrong, but from a scientific view, that play is really good for you.
Yeah.
And what I try to show is how good it was for me and for my family, and to make that a part of it. Does that mean that you don't deal with the seriousness? Oh, you got to deal with the seriousness. There's times not to play.
Right.
But I was talking with a woman a week ago who I was speaking at the American Association of Christian Counselors convention in Orlando, and her husband had been shot. Her husband was I started to say a CHP, that's California Highway Patrol in Colorado. Maybe it is a CHP. And he pulled somebody over and they shot him and killed him.
Wow.
And she was saying that one of the breakthroughs for her was she was on a jet ski with her two kids, twins, who had lost their father. This is terrible. And it had been some time, and the kids fell off, and they went, Mommy, do it again. They were all happy for the moment. Yeah. And she said she found herself smiling, and it was really healing. She even used the word healing. It was healing for her. Well, that doesn't mean that she's not a grieving widow that is going through incredibly tough stuff.
Right.
But she found that in that moment, it was a connection with her kids.
Yeah.
Sometimes what I like to say is words don't always just connect. If you sit at the table and have, harsh words or whatever, or even any words, but sometimes connection causes you to have better words. So that's why I tell people, go on date nights if you're married with your kids, engage in fun times, because that's going to open up stuff.
Yeah, I love that. And that's so true. I've seen that in my life too, when, it's easy to get so regimented, almost militarily, like, okay, we're going to have dinner, then we're going to do this and this and this and this and this. And it's like the times when I find time to wrestle with my kids or just be silly or just do stupid things, that I think those are going to be the insertion in the daily grind. That's things they're going to remember. They're not going to remember bedtime routines and dinner routines. They're going to remember the conversation around dinner, the family devotions, the times of silliness. And so those are important to sprinkle in. And like you said, it's about a balance and finding the time for both, without being, swaying one side or the other. So
yeah, no, you're right. I think if you're going to err, I'd err a little bit on fun, even with devotions. Like our kids at the beginning, we were doing family devotions and they were like, no, not family devotions, because it was like me saying in the Greek, these are little kids when they were Cathy goes, wait, these are little kids. Let's have some fun. So we started doing plays. Cathy brings out red vines and chocolate, not fair. Do that at family devotions. You should have serious, conversation. Well, guess what? The memories of those family devotions got better and better as we actually lightened up a bit and did some interactive stuff, as opposed to, listening to dad give 3 points in a poem and go, please, do we have to hear this again?
Yeah, that's really good. I love that. So one of your principles is thank therapy. That's a tongue twister if you say it too fast. Thank therapy and the importance of practicing gratitude continually. I like one of your quotes. It says, being thankful is the password into God's presence. So I love that. So talk more about why it's important to be thankful.
Yeah. Well, I'm convinced that this is a life message for me, the thank therapy stuff. And I'm convinced that if we have more of an attitude of gratitude, that kind of phrase, that it really does open up our spirit to God. And it also, it awakens us to the beauty of the world and relationships. And I don't think personally, and I read this psychologically, I don't think psychologically you can be both a person who feels self-pity and depression on the self-pity side, not on a clinical side. But I don't think you can do that and still be thankful. And yet I struggled with it, Tim, because the Bible says in everything you do, give thanks. And I'm like, hey, am I supposed to give thanks for my mom's death, for my 3 brothers who went through divorce, for alcoholism in my family, system, whatever. And then it didn't say it didn't say for, it said in. In my mom's death, she's now free from pain. She's with Jesus. She actually sort of brought my dad to the Lord by dying, because my dad ended up marrying her best friend, and her best friend was a Christian, and my dad became a Christian. I mean, there's neat elements in the midst of all of that.
Sure.
But I find that if I can change my mindset to be thankful, and how I do that is, this morning I woke up and it was funny because it was like 3:15 in the morning and I could hear our dog, and I'm like, oh man, I hope the dog's not sick. He was sick yesterday. And I said, this is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to acknowledge that this is the day that God made, and I'm going to rejoice. I mean, it's a choice. It's a matter of choice. Thankfulness is a matter of choice. So then today I wrote down reasons why I was thankful in my little journal. None of them are sexy. I shouldn't say sexy, because the first thing I was going to say is I put my wife, Cathy, and I'm going, well, but you know what I mean? They're not like fancy things that anybody would like get all, wow, that's amazing. Right. I didn't write sunsets, and I didn't write walks on the beach. I wrote people, and I wrote awesome experiences that I've just had. Thank you, God, for that. Homeward had a big benefit Sunday night, and I hadn't even thanked him for it. And, Homeward raised $300,000, and there were people who were so inspired by what we do, and on and on. And I just went, okay, well, good. Check it off. That's that. We're done with that. Let's go on to the next, ministry thing. When I just needed to say, wait, God, I'm embarrassed. I didn't thank you. Today is, down the road from this benefit, and I haven't thanked you. And so I just stopped and thanked him. Well, what that does is that gets me in a right mindset. What I say in there a lot, the theme would be, your circumstance may not change, but your attitude can change. And that makes all the difference in the world. So, hey, you know what? My wife right now has cancer, and she's just had surgery, and hopefully her story is going to be like mine. But she has such an amazing attitude. And I'm like, what's that all about? Well, she's facing her circumstance, and she's doing all that she needs to do, but it's her attitude that's so good. And she does that with a thankful heart because, hey, she's breathing. and the surgery was a success, and we're going to find out more and more as time goes on.
Yeah.
That's healthy. That's actually a spiritual discipline. Therapy is a spiritual discipline. And we'd probably, a lot of people, positive psychology, talk about gratefulness and how good that is for it. What they don't realize is the Bible's been talking about that for a long time.
Yeah. Yep. God invented it and why it's good for us. There's so many things the Bible tells us to do that are good for us emotionally, psychologically, all these things that are how we're wired. And it's like the God who made us gives us these instructions for our benefit. And that's what's exciting. And the thing with, and I like how you say, thankfulness is a choice. And we talked about this at our church a few months ago about prayer, and how, and our senior pastor told us that he wanted everybody to just go before God in prayer, but only be thankful to God. Only tell God the things you're thankful for. Don't go with your, request list, like he's a vending machine, but actually go before God. And it was really hard. Like I would do that for like 30 minutes and just thank God for things. But in my mind is like, okay, I need to tell God about this. I need to do this. But the thing that he said too, was that we don't give God any new information. We go before God and we're like, okay, I have to tell God this so he can fix it. Well, God already knows. He wants to know your heart, and he wants us to be, aligned with his will. And by being thankful to God, we also recognize his authority in our life. And there's so many times that we forget the things that we prayed for that God actually did for us, because we're on to the next thing. And so we have to stop and reflect and be thankful for God for the things he has given us. And as long as we have breath in our lungs, there's always something to be thankful for.
Yes. Yeah. Really. Wow. You just said it so well, so articulate. And, your listeners or watchers, if you're seeing this like on Zoom, they need to hear that. That's a great comment.
It's a good reminder for all of us. Yep, absolutely. Well, the next principle I want to talk about is if the devil can't make you bad, he'll make you busy, which I love that. So talk about why we need to have discernment with our time and not succumb to the dangers of hurry. You say hurry is often the enemy of relationships. And I think this is important because, the devil's not going to come to your door and say, okay, worship me and be a Satanist, but he will try to distract you. And distractions are so prevalent in a world of technology, especially. Yeah. And this idea that we just have to go, 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 go. So talk more about that.
Well, I think, Tim, that it's this breathless pace in which we live our lives. I think that's killing the core of our soul. In fact, it was, I can't think of who it was, but it's a quote that's been in my head, that hurry is a form of violence to your soul.
Wow.
And, that's strong, but when the devil can't make you bad, he'll make you busy. So, where a friend of mine gave me that. I graduated from graduate school. I didn't stay for the graduation because I didn't celebrate. You and I were just talking about this. I was already moving to go work in a church. Cathy and I were, recently married. So we're in the, car driving across the country to come to California. And he writes me this note. He said, hey, missed your graduation. If the devil can't make you bad, he'll make you busy. And it was prophetic for me, because I'm not the guy who's going to be in the arms of another woman. I'm not the guy who's going to embezzle money. I'm just going to be so busy and when you're busy, talk about discerning. When you're busy, you can't discern what God is trying to, get through to you. And so, for me, we are overcommitted and underconnected. So we get underconnected with our primary relationships, our relationship with God, our relationship with our spouse, if we're married, our relationship with our kids. And sure, we're around them, and we're even around God, especially those of us who work in the church or involved in that. But the connection isn't there because we're just so busy.
Yeah.
And so I think we have to be, again, intentional about taking times of Sabbath. Sabbath, means rest. So rest doesn't mean, like for me, rest might mean going for a run at the beach. I mean, that's rest. Somebody else, like my brother, would be taking a nap. Man, that guy is like the napper. Fantastic. It refreshes him. Okay. So we have to find out what refreshes us. And even, in Exodus, the Bible says that God created the heavens and the earth in 6 days. And on the seventh day, he rested and was refreshed. And the word in Hebrew is he exhaled. But that kind of sounds weird. So they probably made it, and was refreshed. But, think about it. You take a breath. Yeah. And so I think we have to put that into our life. And again, I think it's this, like I said, the breathless pace. Families are too busy. We're too busy. Cathy used to always say to me, my wife, we have a Messiah, Jim. He's doing very well. I'm not sure you need to replace him here. But, I say that as a speaker to parents, I say that to a lot of soccer moms and hockey dads and whatnot.
Yeah.
You might have to make sure that you're taking care of your own soul. A woman said to me one time, I was speaking I used to speak to kids, and I was speaking to about 8,000 kids. And afterwards she said, I have a word from God. That always scares me. I'm going, okay, great. Is my zipper down? I mean, what's the word?
Yeah.
But she said, I think I'm supposed to say to you, untended fires soon become nothing but a pile of ashes. And I thought, right at a time when I was really moving and grooving way too fast, probably, I went, that's for me. Yeah. Thank you. And I need to really reflect on that. And for the rest of my life, I've kind of reflected on that phrase, because I'm the type who can get too busy. And when I'm too busy, I'm not in touch as much with God. I don't hear him. Like when you're busy, you can be married, but it's not like you're going like, it's in this relationship. It's not as good as it used to be, or it's because we're too busy. We're just crossing in the night. Well, we can do that with God. We can do that with our own soul. We can do that with our body. So to me, it's a key principle in life. And I'm not saying that we all move to Wyoming and live in a commune. I'm saying we have to figure out how to do it here and in the now. And that takes a lot of discernment and discipline. And to me, what in my own life, I'm feeling like discipline, which really there's a lot of the book that's about discipline, but I'm learning that discipline helps give me discernment, better discernment, when I'm more disciplined about taking that time of rest or taking the time with God.
Yeah, 100%. And, I've seen this in my life too. And I know a lot of people, they set goals for themselves. Like, when I get to this point in my life, then I'll do this, when the kids are at this age, then we can start doing family time. When the kids are out of sports, then we can start doing this. When I retire, when I'm 67 or whatever it is, then I can start to take vacations. And the thing is, it's just this never ending thing you just push down the road. And, the Bible says that none of us can count on tomorrow. So it's like, we have to just make the best of today with the time God has given us. And that's exactly the principles you're talking about, is don't wait to have fun or to use your time wisely or to take rest. Find time in the margin that you're given to get rid of that's part of discerning our time, is how can we use our time wisely and use it for God's glory.
So wise. I just need to have you come and hang out with me, because you're summarizing stuff that it takes me an hour to say, and you can say it so shortly. It's so good.
Well, so I want to end on actually a couple curveballs. So you ready?
Yep, I'm ready.
All right. So you have a lot of parenting.
I played baseball, so I'm okay with curveballs. I like.
So you have a lot of parenting and marriage resources. What is your number one advice that you could say to our audience for parenting and for marriage?
I would say, make your top priority your top priorities. So top priority is God. And that's more important than helping your kid, at whatever stage they're at. Make sure you're caring for your own soul. Then I would say, make sure that you're putting time into your marriage, and really putting time in. I mean, the difference between a good marriage and a great marriage is actually intentionality. You're going to put more time in with your kids, especially when they're younger. It's not like you're going to go, hey, mom and I are going to go out for the weekend, and you're 4 and there's some peanut butter in the cupboard. No, of course not. But make sure that you take care of the time with your marriage, then your kids, then your vocation. So to me, it's make those top priorities. And it's a constant course correction. I was speaking in where was I? Houston. And I got to meet an astronaut, and he said to me, and I was talking about being an astronaut, and he said, 97% of what we do is a course correction. Houston is doing a course correction for us. 3% we're kind of on our own. Wow. I was like, whoa, that's amazing. Well, it's just course corrections. But to me, make your top priority your top priorities. Will it ever be perfect? No. Will it be messy? Absolutely. Is it the right way to do it? You better believe it. And I can testify to that not that my family is perfect or that my life is perfect, but that for me, when I'm in that groove, it goes a lot better.
Really good. Love that. Great way to end. And just encourage everyone to get your book. If you could let everyone know where they can connect with you and get your book among the other resources you have.
Sure. Well, I'd encourage anybody to come to Homeword, HOMEWORD.com. We've got great resources, not just me. We're the largest provider of parenting and marriage seminars in the United States. So we've got great things for the church. We've got great things for individuals on that, as well as if they pick up the book, they can get it on Amazon. They can get it on, they can come to our website. Lots of that books everywhere right now.
Awesome. We'll put those in the show notes. Once again, thank you so much for coming on, Jim, and God bless you, your family, and your ministry.
Yeah. Hey, great to be with you, Tim. Great job too, by the way.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you for listening to the Everyday Discernment Podcast. For more information on Discerning Dad, go to discerning-dad.com. Be sure to follow on all the social media platforms. Just search for Discerning Dad. Please share this podcast with a friend and leave an honest review on whichever platform you listen. Feel free to send any comments, suggestions, questions, or prayer requests at discerningdad@outlook.com. Until next time, keep fighting the good fight.